All right, so what we're going to be looking at today is how to optimize assets in general. Now, this includes things like materials, which I did a doc and video tutorial on recently. And we've also look at, I think retopology might be a good one. With the stability AI, to my knowledge, unless they've got a model that actually improves the retopology, most AI 3D things do not consider the poly count like at all. So the final result of that is basically needing to retopologize that information. Now, the two different approaches to that would be, let me see, making what would you call it? So retopologize, which basically means trace in 3D. Trace in 3D with better edge loops, lower poly count. Those are the two main things, honestly. So the edge loops are the edges of your polygon. So let's see if I can pull up one of my previous VRMs that go into a lot of this a bit clearer. Where are they? Here we go. So these guys. Who do we want to play with? We'll play with whoever's last on the list. Raphael. So let's go back to layout up here. Why is there? Just move around, that'll be fine. Let's go there and rotate that. Yeah. Okay. So this is a VRM, but the and a lot of the things that you talk about with retopology applies even more with VRMs. So if we look at this, and just for style points, let's get some wireframes going. Okay, cool. All right. So as you can see, this is quite a low polygon character. And even down here, for example, but if you don't show the wireframe, where did that go? Oh, that's to be selected. It's a bit harder to tell, especially with this. So if you're using a toon shader, for example, you don't get the shading, and it's even more difficult to see the poly count from the front. And this texture, for example, I went a bit overboard and used this one. And this texture is like 16 by 16 pixels, right? So that texture is about that big, for example, which is very small. I think it's like 5K or like kilobytes, very tiny. And basically getting whole sections. So if you look at all of that, you get whole sections of the body and just cram them into the spaces here. And as you can see, like these three colors here, I'm not even using. Purple, orange, and blue. I'm using them with the other turtles. But say, for example, I think these three aren't getting used. And these could actually be smaller as well. So if I went scale, no, this one's better. Align vertically and align horizontally, it could literally be 1 pixel. So this could be, because of those two colors, which I've used a little bit. So this could be 2, so it's 2 by 4, so that's 8. So this could actually be 8 by 8 pixels, if you really wanted to. The catch with that, though, is when you've got a texture in Unity, unless you set it to a specific type of, I think it's filtering, it will blend between the two colors. So instead of having a very strict sort of grid color here, you have blurred areas between the two. That said, Unity material or even the Uni VRM materials, for example, you can set that to lock to this so it doesn't try to blend it and make it prettier, because in this case, making things that small prettier makes you much, much worse. So in this case, because this is so small, I've added polygons to actually make the color, for example. So this darkened shade here, which I could probably put into those two. I should have done that actually, to waste more space of my 16 by 16 pixel thing. So, for example, you can design the space or design the asset to optimize the, or less optimize the poly count because you're saving so much in the texture size. So, for example, a lot of this black line work is a polygon loop or polygon detail. So that's one way that you can really optimize file size is by using what you call palette texturing, and maybe increase the poly count a little bit. But to be honest, I didn't do it that much. It was actually quite fun to sort of create that detail in this. Now, I've got off track. Back to the main point. If you are optimizing an asset, let's go back to this one. Yeah. If you're optimizing an asset, so say for example, we use Stability AI, which is a new partner for our Buildathon. So using AI to make assets, you would most likely need to optimize the mesh and possibly the texture as well. I haven't used the Stability AI. I haven't used many of the AIs. I stole one of Paradox's assets that he made in 3D, and it's mixed. It looked really good when it was small, but when you start making it bigger, it starts getting sort of. At least this was with, I think it was with Luma, which is another one, and earlier. So once again, every 2 weeks, the whole ecosystem is significantly better than it was. But looking at the asset, and I think it was a temple or temple parts and stuff, looking at it real small was really quite good. But once you started getting really close to the asset, it was pretty clear that it was AI based. So there was like sort of muddiness or let's say artifacting in the texture. You had the equivalent of 6 fingers in the detail. So the door was kind of there and kind of wasn't. So a lot of the detail just wasn't very good. That said, I think 3D objects by AI is really good reference point at this point. Once again, it'll replace everyone's jobs soon, but for now, 3D assets are still good reference. So if I was going to make Stability AI or Luma or any of those, I would make the asset, get it how I want, and then use that as reference to make the high quality asset. And if the asset is high quality enough, then you can use that as the, let's say, high polygon asset, and then bake that information onto a low polygon asset. So there's different approaches to optimize an AI asset in a way that creates cool, cool and fast, and that's a key thing. Cool and optimized assets for a monospace. Because it's WebGL and it does need to get those poly counts and texture file sizes down. So let's look at a couple of things. So the first one, what I'd like to do I have any assets that I could use? Yeah, let's pull up my modular apartment. No, modular house. Yeah, this one. Don't save. Yeah, this one. So this is kind of my go-to template in regards to modular assets, which is kind of one of the categories of the Buildathon. So basically, you make little pieces, bits and pieces of a building, and think of it more like Lego, I guess you could say. So with these pieces, that would cost a significant amount of money if they were Lego, because that's what Lego does now. You could build a very simple or even quite a complicated house with these assets. Now, all of these assets use one material, which I've called palette. And if you go to UV editing, it looks like this, basically. So I'm using a trim sheet approach to this asset. So we have sort of a rock situation here, and I think I have, yeah, normal as well. So we have rocks up the top, we have some wood here, we sort of like a flat wall, which is kind of this stuff here, like that. We have sort of the top of wood, because I sort of wanted to get that effect in there. We have a metal block, and we have tiles. That looks like that. Right, so we've got that. Now, say for example, if we went to shading, so say we've got our texture selected, and then go over to shading, you have access to the shader editor, which is kind of like shader graph or node graph, or in many applications now that everyone does this. So basically, we're looking at feeding in the textures to this principal VSDF and material output. But the material output we don't care about. We'll put that over there. Put that over there. So in the tutorial recently, we uploaded this this week, I think it was. Well, the doc was done 2 weeks away. The video was done this week. So basically, you need to add your two textures. So we've got our base color, and we've got our normal map, and then connect those to the base color, for example. And then the normal map, also an image texture, has to go through a normal map node. So we'll look at adding those very soon. And I'm also kind of randomly using the alpha, and I don't think I even have alpha on this channel. I'm just putting it in, and that's going to roughness. So we'll do a quick look at getting the alpha channel to look good on this asset. So we can do that as well. So yeah, that's what we're doing with this. When I export all of these as an asset, now note I wouldn't export it like this. This is a display piece. I would export it like this, right? So when it comes to modular assets, the pivot point is actually very important, because that is one of the tools of several that you can use in Unity, or the ecosystems that we've got to manipulate the assets. So in this case, I put the pivot point at the edge. You could put it in the center, like down here, so you can rotate it sort of like in the middle. So if you put it here, yeah, you can rotate it that way. But if you put it here, you sort of rotate it like that, which means you can do a corner of the building really, really easily. And the thing is, Unity also includes the what do you call it? The ability to jump between the center of the object for a pivot point and the pivot location of the object. So you can sort of jump between those 2 points. So it's very easy to center and rotate it if you need to in Unity. So by putting the pivot on walls and things like that, here you actually increase the functionality of your assets for the creator, either yourself or others. So you've got that. And then you have all of the assets basically have the same unit. Things like tiles, like if you look at this guy, that is in the middle, because that makes sense for that particular piece. And then the gate, this is actually extremely important to have the pivot at the right place, because if you want to rotate it, I'm going to keep it a global. So if I rotate it, that will rotate on the pivot, and you don't want a gate to pivot in the center. Where can I do that? Because that would be amusing. Maybe that one? Nope. No, that's not there. But yeah, so you don't want gates to rotate in the middle. You want them to rotate at the side. And with the Mona Brains ecosystem, which we're about to do, you want it so, say, for example, you create an asset that if the player walks into a collider around the gate, it opens. You want it to open correctly. So pivots are extremely important for modular assets, or even just assets in general, because of how they animate, but also how you use them in a modular environment. So yeah, we've got that. Now, back to this. So let's have a quick overview of how to add nodes. There are a ton of ways to add nodes. The easiest, I guess, is you go up here, you go to add, and let's say we want an image texture. So go image texture and put that there, and go open, load your image. So that's one. Next one, right mouse click over here, go add image texture. Done. So that's just right mouse click in the background. If you click on, okay, let's try this. If you select it, right. So if you select it and right click, it'll come up with this one. But if it's not selected and you click anywhere, it'll come up. So there's that. The other one, the Control A, nope. Yeah, Shift A is add in Mona. So even up here, for example, if you do Shift A, you'll add stuff. So Shift A is a very useful hotkey that I never use but should, to add something to somewhere. So Shift A, and then you got, like, you don't have to go. Sorry, you just go down to, once again, texture, image texture, and there we go. Once you've added an image texture, load the texture, whatever it might be. So in this case, let's do that one. So that, once you have an image texture and you don't want to go through the noding that way, you can go Shift D, and that will duplicate it. You can also go Control C, Control V, and that'll paste it. So lots of options for adding nodes. Now this one, another approach to adding nodes, is from, let's say, property. You drag this and then let go anywhere. You have a search tool that you can search your thing in. Now, small note, and this took me a second to realize, say, for example, each property will be available in this list. So if I go normal map strength, like so, this will connect it to the strength property, for example, which we don't want. We actually want color. So the one approach around that is to delete that. So you just grab the the end point of a connector, take it off, and then just let it go. And then you can connect it down to color. Do note that you can't delete from here. That's connecting them. So you've got two ends. The other one, I think, was it Alt? Nope. Shift, Control? Nope. Control, right mouse button? Yeah. Too many hotkeys. So if you hold Control and right drag, you can cut connectors. So got that. So in this case, say for example, you got normal map strength and you got normal map color. So it's the same node, but it's the property that you want, and that'll connect it correctly. So let's get rid of that one, and then we can connect that and that. There is a tool called Node Wrangler, which I think offers a lot of alternate approaches to these sorts of things. So you've got that. But yeah, so that's creating normal maps. Now the alpha map, we'll look at that in a second. But this alpha map and the color map will be on any texture. Therefore, you can use any color texture, and alpha has separate channels that you can use in your final result. Now, the choice you have to make, especially with the Buildathon, is we have a limit of 2 textures per set, I think it is, actually. Yeah. So if you make 15 assets, it needs to use those two materials. How you use them is up to you though. So you have your RGB color, and I think you can split that. So let's maybe play with that in a sec. And your alpha. So for example, you can use your color for the color, and you can use your alpha for metallic. You can use alpha for roughness. You could use alpha for emission, but that would be a black and white emission. But that said, emission actually has color. So let's say we put that in there. No, we want strength. So let's say we do a channel for strength. So white or one would be full strength, or one strength, and black would be 0 and everything in between. So say for example you would have red. So as you can sort of see, you'll have very red and like approaches to that, and you can change color. Now with that one, if you're lucky enough that roughness and emissive strength are the same data, you can use it for both. But it's very rare that one channel can be used for more than one thing. So just a heads up on that, I guess. So yeah, that's emissive. Sheen, coat, transmission, specular. Specular is kind of smoothness, kind of. Unity uses smoothness, but because of the GLB import approach, you can, what would you call it? Yeah, usually you would use roughness in that, but you can use specular as well if you wanted to. Subsurface, I don't think Unity supports, and if it does, it is extremely expensive. So I would probably say don't use subsurface. Transmission, don't know what that one is in Blender actually, because emission is this one. So not sure what transmission is. Coat, also don't use it, and sheen, also probably not that useful. So the ones you usually use with game assets, and that's the key thing, game assets, will be diffuse, roughness or smoothness / specular if you wanted to. Normal is definitely a big one. Emission as well. You do have other things like ambient occlusion, so the darkness in shadows and stuff. Not sure if you can use that in here, but maybe there's another node instead of principal BSDF. I haven't really looked into that. That said, yeah, that's getting more complicated than you probably need. So stick with the main ones, especially if you're new to this. So yeah, that's that. So let's have a quick look at making a channel. Let's go with roughness. Now, if you have two textures, say for example, the common choice would be between the three. So you've got metallic, roughness, and alpha, right? So you have two textures, but you have three options. So you'd have to drop one. So you could use roughness and alpha. You could use metallic and alpha. You could use metallic and roughness, for example. Which one you choose is up to you. So let's go with this one. Okay, so this is just the flat texture. There is no alpha channel at the moment. Now, there are different ways to do this. You could put the alpha channel in here. But one I find most clear is by making a folder, renaming this to, let's just go diffuse, putting it in there, clicking on the folder, and then clicking on this layer masks, and putting that in there. So this is now completely white. But say, for example, if I wanted, let's say, so let's go, we need to add black, so not rough, so shiny. So shiny is these two. Right. So let's say we put not so rough, anti-rough, if you will. So let's go there. That's the color we want, and make sure that's selected. And I'm just going to use Alt-Delete, and that will go invisible, or a little bit very invisible. So what basically this does is all of this will be very rough, And I might even make this really rough. So these ones a little bit rough. Let's grab that. Make this maybe half. Maybe less. Maybe there. Okay. So let's once again Alt Delete. Now, of course, you could use gradients or fills or else that sort of stuff. And like makes this one little, a little more. So you can sort of see this. So this would be very rough. This would be, I think I've done it wrong. Yeah, I've done it wrong. Roughness. I've been using Unity for too long and I've forgotten. Use that. So we want this to be more rough. Yeah, this is the direction we want to go. Yeah. Okay. Very rough, a little rough, semi-rough, and not rough at all. So the tiles are quite shiny, basically, and the metal is very shiny. So we've got that. Actually, I'm going to make the tile same as this one, I think. So, oops. Once again, make sure you've got the, yeah, there we go. Okay, so the rocks and the metal are more polished. The wood and the tiles are semi-polished, and the wall is not polished at all. Now, of course, you could add a detail. So I'm going to try something here because I'm kind of interested in this. So let's desaturate that. Let's see if we can. Let's put. Let's get some levels going. I want it to be sort of full detail. I'm gonna get rid of that maybe. That. So sort of make this gray. There. Bit. Okay, let's do that. Let's get some brightness in contrast. Contrast is a good one. Cool. Now you would of course apply different layers on all of this. So if you want this to be shiny, you would make it darker and stuff like that. So another approach, and I'm just going to save time by like, what would you call it? Can I copy that? Yes, I can. So let's do multiply. Yeah, screen. Screen, and then let's reduce the opacity for that, and let's do that. Join those. Copy that. Control C. Control V. No. Okay. V. Let's get rid of that and hope. Okay. So if you want to turn this into a mask, I think we have to do this. So I'm going to go to channels, new channel, alpha, paste in this one. So you've got that, and then hold control and click on it, and it will select the black and white. So it will select the white down to and get that detail, right? So if I go to layers, let's go up here. If I go to layers, put the mask in, it will have that detail in there, if that makes sense. So you can sort of, you can't really see it because it's all alpha, but that's what it's doing. So yeah, using the alpha channel to kind of grab the grayscale levels, and then you can use that as a mask to put that into, oh no, it's gone. There we go. Ah, interesting. Okay. Let's remove that one. Hopefully that's the one that it allows. Yes, it does. Okay. So it does make a group mask here, so you could just do it there as well. But yeah, pick your poison. So now that we've got our texture with our roughness is an alpha, we can save that. So I'm going to export that as a PNG. Um, and I'm going to get over this metallic roughness one, right? So I'm going to save. Yes. Now, small note, to my knowledge, these texture assets do not update automatically, unfortunately. So with Unity, it does, which is great. And that's one of the big things, actually, that I love about Unity, is that when you update an asset, everything updates. Full stop. It's great. Blender doesn't do that. But you did see the notice that there was a small difference between those two. And it's interesting. Why is that weird? Let's go to UVs and see what's happening there. Oh, interesting. So as you can see, there's a little bit more roughness than these ones. I'm not too sure why, but I have an idea. So let's give it a shot. Let's go to face orientation. No, it's not that. That said, while we're here, face orientation is very important because in game assets, um, you only have one side of the asset, right? There are ways to do it, and we'll look at that in a second with the material, but that is more expensive or a little bit more expensive. So unless it's very important, it's generally recommended not to use double-sided assets. Now, to check the side of your asset or the normals, so the normals is which way the polygon is facing, right? So in this case, the blue is a solid, and the red would be invisible in the game environment. Now to see that, you go up to viewport overlays up here, and then go down to face orientation. So in here, it's double-sided. I can see that perfectly fine. But say, for example, if I want to make it like more performant, you can put on backface color, and then it's not see-through, but or it is see-through on one side. So the red would be see-through, the clear would be not see-through. So unless needed, it is recommended to turn on, off, to enable, we'll go with that one, backface culling in order to save that little bit of performance, which is good. I honestly have no idea why that is not working great. It's so weird. Yeah, yeah, interesting. But as you can see, the wood is a little bit shiny, but the wall is not, and that's using that roughness channel, or the alpha channel, correctly. So hopefully it describes how to do it, and it'll make more sense than this one. Now, the other option, and you can do that with metallic as well. So there's the difference between roughness and metallic is kind of difficult to describe, actually. But roughness is kind of like how polished it is, and metallic is basically if it is metal or not. A simple approach to metallic is simply off and on textures, because an object is usually metallic or it is not metallic. So, say for example, high level, like low level, sorry, I'm thinking smoothness, low level roughness, and zero metallic would be polished plastic, for example. Low level roughness and metallic would be very shiny polished metal, for example. So the reflections are a little bit different, I think, is one way to describe that. So yeah. Now, with alpha, that's a little bit different. So we can look at, say, we get rid of roughness and we want to put it into alpha. So that's down here, right? Now, nothing's going to change because this is not an alpha material yet, right? So two things with alpha. One, you have to enable backface culling. If you turn it off, Unity anyway, I think in Blender it looks okay, but in Unity it does not. So even solid areas of your texture will kind of look transparent or see-through. So make sure to turn backface culling on if it looks a bit weird. So if something is solid and you can still see through it in Unity or even Blender, make sure to turn backface culling on. We want to change blend mode to alpha blend. And then it'll take a moment and then it'll do that. So you can sort of see that some assets are a bit more solid than others. And that's kind of it. So we're going to get rid of show backface as well. And there you've got your sort of result, which is all very cool. Now, alpha blend is the most expensive of the blend modes for transparency. The other one I'd probably recommend looking into is alpha clip. Alpha hashed is an interesting one. Wouldn't even worry about that one too much. But alpha clip, what this one does is basically makes it on and off, and the off point is based on the threshold. So at 50% gray, anything that's darker will be transparent, and everything that's lower will be or vice versa, which one? So, but the thing is, you can adjust this if you wanted to. So you can sort of do stuff like that. That said, say for example, if you were using a Unity space and not just a GLB on its own, you could possibly use this approach with a Unity material, not a Blender material, because you have more control over it. Use the shader graph, and then you can use that as a slider to show an asset or hide an asset. So if you put a noise-based threshold on noise-based texture in the alpha channel, and then made a Unity material, and then played with the similar thing. I think it's called alpha clip, I think, something like that. And then slide the thing with an animation. So you could use Reactor, you could use Monobrain possibly, visual scripting definitely, and then you could make something appear in really cool ways. So basically, kind of like this. So yeah, alpha clip is pretty cool and useful in its own way. So that's how you do transparency. So that's basically materials for the Buildathon more than anything else, but also just in general. Coming from Blender anyway. I'm pretty sure that other tools like say Maya, 3D Studio Max and all of that have very similar tools in regards to material creation. But I haven't used Max in a very long time, and I haven't used Maya much at all, because Blender's free and great. Apart from weight painting. Weight painting sucks. I really don't like that in Blender. But apart from that, and maybe applying multiple things to multiple objects. Sometimes, like if you apply a material, so if I selected all these objects and applied a material, sometimes well, pretty much all the time, it doesn't apply to all of them. It's one by one. So I think you have to use like this, like copy material and paste to selected and stuff. Oh, there we go. Copy material to selected. So that's a quick way to do it. But in my mind, select them all, apply them, done. Stuffle, small, big time sales. Okay. So that's materials, done. Let's move on to retopology. So let's say I have a high polygon asset that does things. Optimise Prime was built low poly, so I didn't have to worry about that. Caleb is high. Let's have a look at this. I haven't used this in a very long time. This was a project I did many years ago, but I want to make a VRM of it. And if I can find it, I don't think I even used Blender back then. So let's import maybe FBX. Content creation, VRM, StarCraft Marine. Downloads? Nope. So this is a character I made for Unreal Tournament. Forget which one, actually. Is it even in here? What's going on? Oh, that's blend. What? Okay, let's do it the old-fashioned way. Max. Ooh. Where's the biggest one? That one. Ring version 3. Huh. Can I import Max into... object? Export? ESK? No, that's UK. Ooh, ooh, ooh. OBJs are okay. So if I can import, let's go new. General. Don't save. Import Max. Please be Max. That would have been so cool. All right, let's see what the objects I have are. No idea how this is going to play. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, that works. Yeah, all right, we can use that. Bring back memories. Okay, let's get rid of that one. Let's mirror that. Add modifier. Mirror. So, flipping. So as you can see, there's a couple of pixels in here. Or polygons, sorry. I can clean that up though. I forget how I did this. It was a long time ago. Anyway, this is a good example of what a high polygon asset would do. So say for example, if you made an AI asset, it would probably look like this. So the more orange it is, the worse it is as a poly count. And you want to retopologize that. There are other ways. So let's do all of them. Let's actually go into all of them. Should I apply that? Yeah, just to make it easy. Okay. So we have our high polygon asset. Let's say that's made in AI. You made it yourself in ZBrush or Blender, sculpting, whatever you want. We need to reduce that poly count from that to something significantly less. Now, do note that this, the asset itself has pretty good loops, which will help, right? So they're all grids and stuff. Things, triangles like this, like n-gons, or I forget what those points are called. Not so much. I kind of want to join the middle. That's how I roll. Let's go down those. Do it again. Actually, holding Alt and left click will select edge loops. Once you have selected, press 1, and it'll go that nodes, and then I'm just going to go x 0. Uh, Scale x 0. There we go. And then I'm going to merge vertices by distance, and it has merged them. And that number here, merged by distance, is very small, so that's kind of fine. Let's see how that looks. By getting rid of the wireframe, much better. Cool. Okay. So method number one, decimation. Add modifier. Deform. Generate. There we go. Decimate. Um, so depending on larger assets will take time, but as you can see, decimation has some problems. Like it, depending on how it works, depending on how complex your space is or the asset is, you'll find that it may work well, it may not. Two, just to see what this does. So collapse doesn't look great. So if, for example, you had an arm that looked like this, that would animate terribly. And like with that, the Ninja Turtle was a prime example of sort of edge loops that cut. Can you see it? You can. So you have edge loops that cut down the arm. So when you rotate it like that, it animates well. If you had something like this, it would look like really kind of messy, which you don't want. So even with high polygon assets, with animation especially, you kind of want good edge loops for the animation. But there's also the case that, say for example, if you want to select a part of the asset really quickly using Alt and left click, that will select the edge loop. So if I selected an edge loop, oh, this is going to be interesting. It didn't work. Because, yeah. So if I wanted an edge loop, that wouldn't work well with decimation. So other price is unsubdivide. So this might work with this one on the grounds that it kind of was subdivided and it will just sort of remove some of those. So this isn't too bad. The UVs go a bit funny, but I might be able to fix that one. So let's see how far we can take this. Yeah, that's pushing it. And that's getting really bad edge loops already. So if we go to 2, because that looks all right. So say for example, after that, we can, what a really useful one I find used all the time is weighted normal. And that will clean up the normals, right? So the poly count gets reduced to 40,000 from whatever it was, which is a lot. So let's get up here, statistics. So it's 80,000. So if we decimated that, and we just go, let's do this. So I'm gonna, well, let's do this. So I'm gonna go back to 1, double, 0, triple. Is that how it works? So I've actually reduced the poly count significantly, half again. And once again, this works because the original asset was subdivided quite a lot, right? So the original mesh was, I think, like sub-D modeled and then subdivided. So I'm just undoing that, even though it's like I don't have that information. And then you have this tool, weighted normal, which will kind of clean up normals really quite well a lot of the time. So I use this for like pretty much everything. Actually, it's really good for cleaning up these sorts of things. And you can sort of keep sharp. So if you wanted normals, like say I wanted, let's say that line to be like a crease. You can kind of do that. Usually, I think you actually, for that to work, you actually have to put normals, auto smooth, and object shade smooth on, for example. But because they are these, maybe not. Yeah, so you can adjust that, and weighted normal is very useful. So let's get rid of that one. So 2 iterations is fine, but 3 starts breaking everything like that. Even with the weighted normal, just the loops are really bad. Unless you want abstract art, and then perfect. It's done the job well. So collapse, not so good. Unsurvived, really good. Unsubdivide is really good for subdivided assets. So let's put that back to 2. Not bad. And then, for example, yeah, let's do this. I'm going to apply that. It'll take a second. And then I'm going to grab this. And because these are still mostly loops, because I made this so well the first time, I could select some of these as I want, and then just go delete, dissolve edges, right? So the silhouette doesn't change that much, but it saves a lot of polygons, right? And I'd have to clean some of these things up. So let's say, let's just merge some vertices there at last, clear those two maybe, etc., etc. So that is one approach to do it. Let's go back to our version. There we go. Okay. The other decimation we have is planar. Yeah, which honestly kind of looks cool. But yeah, like it's not optimized in any way. You couldn't animate this like at all. I don't think. I think these are like completely separate. But say for example, if you wanted to do an asset with greebles, like a high polygon asset with greebles, so that like Death Star asset type thing, that'd actually be kind of cool. But yeah, once again, not that useful. Not so good with the edges. And say for example, you've got different approaches to like how that works. So like basically I think what it does is it gets plane, and as soon as it reaches that, it'll like decimate it as well. Stuff like that. So there are ways to do decimation. It's not great. So the other option is remeshing. Once again, might not work for some of them. So voxel, that's not going to work with us. But let's do blocks. So you can do some cool stuff with this actually. If you want that effect, right? So we could make Minecraft blocks version. Smooth, also not so great. If anything, that's actually adding, which you don't want. So you can play with some of these, but yeah, maybe not. Sharp, also not that great. But you do get some interesting effects. And voxel, also not that great. But let's, I wonder why. Maybe it's because it's not solid. Don't put voxel down to 0.01. So remesh depends on the asset. Once again, not so good for what we're wanting. But the other remeshing type, and this is much better, is okay. It did not like that. Yeah. So yeah, don't don't put voxel down to 0.01 unless you have a stupid, ridiculously powerful computer. What does that? So the remesh in other situations, so in ZBrush, in Blender even, it actually has some pretty good remesh and decimation automated tools, but a really good one that kind of pays attention to the lines of the asset rather than the polygons of the asset. So this might even clean up your asset better than you've done it, possibly. So yeah, it's called Instant Meshes. It's free. It's a GitHub, and basically it just sort of cleans up assets really quite well. I think there is a GitHub. I think there's a Blender version of this, so you can like get this tool into Blender to remesh your assets a bit better and then adjust accordingly. So those are the what would you call it? The automated approaches to optimizing your asset. Let's look at a manual approach. Now, of course, manual is slower, but it is significantly better, at least until AI gets good. Now, what was it? It was OBJ. Let's get that going again. Downloads? Nope. Yes. I think it was that one. Let's scale it up. I think. I think I can find the rest of the asset because I kind of really want to make this a VRM. I think that'd be really cool. So let's get back to the here. Like that one. And then get these two. Well, LX0. Nope. Which those? High distance. Let's put down our weighted modifier. So clean that up a bit. Now, of course, I'd probably fix that up like that to make it better, but yeah. Okay. So manual retopology is the best way to optimize your assets, but it takes a lot longer. Now the tools are getting better for that, but yeah. So let's go plain. This is very big. Let's scale that down a bit. Dot on the numpad to focus on things, which is pretty cool. I'm going to, just because it's a good habit to get into, anytime I do anything to anything, I will do all transforms. Well, scale at most, so that is 111. Scale is very important, so if you imported that into Unity, if that scale is off, the scale will be off in Unity. So make this sort of a correct size in meters, make that scale, and then export it. Okay. So what we're going to do is move that down a bit more, just for reasons. Once again, scale is fine, but I want to do the pivot to be in the center as well. So you can do that with all transforms. So that will make sure that all of these, and I'm pointing because you can see where I'm pointing, location, rotation, and scale are all sort of clean, if that makes sense. And we have this, so I'm going to move that up above. So what we want to do is make a low polygon asset with our little plane on our high polygon asset. And then we can bake that information or texture that information in different ways. So I'm going to edit this. I'm going to turn that on. Now the one tool you want to use is Snap. So I'm going to turn that on up here and then go down to Face. Yep. Now I'm just trying to think. Yeah, no. So that's it. And once you get a polygon there, no, a polygon, a vertex, and you press G, it's going to snap to the asset, right? And that's basically it. So say, for example, I could uh, sort of do that. And then I'm going to grab that and go E. And I think there are easy, like better ways to do it, actually. There's a lot of remeshing tools, like retopology tools, that are actually quite good now. I haven't looked into them because I'm kind of extremely comfortable. So E once again. Um, with the tools that I kind of have just learned how to use. So I could probably do it much faster. But this is the basics and it doesn't need any add-ons. So you could definitely look into best ways to retopologize assets in Blender. Now I'm sort of considering like this in a way, so I might like end up there. So I've got this nice line. But once you start making more assets, so say for example now I've got 4, I can just sort of like do that and then fix. Now there are other approaches to make this easier to see. So let's look at that. Let's go to this one. I think in front. So this is always going to be in front. If I wanted to, I could do wireframe and let's say make it wire. So I won't see the shape, but I will see where it is in space. So I can just really easily apply this. So there are some viewport settings that you can do on your space to create your amazing assets. Now, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I want, I don't know, things to like be real neat. And from all angles. So the the retopology you're looking at, like the low polygon, is the silhouette. Because if I bake the normals into the low polygon texture, like you won't see any of this detail because the baked map will make a really cool sort of approach to that. So Alt left click, grab that, E. Let's. But in there, you can actually see that it's actually kind of straight. So I'm actually going to do exactly that and keep it the same. There, yeah, yeah. A little bit further down. So edge loops is kind of all about flow and all about silhouette. So at this angle, like from here, there is no silhouette. Oh, I guess there is, because this bit and that bit. But that's not bad for the kind of curve. There is also a silhouette, but you're not going to see that very often because it's sort of like that. So that's more than enough for the task that we're looking at. And once again, G with the snap tool. Let's actually put this on there. Yeah. No, I like it up there actually. There. Okay. So we have the bit sort of done. And then, like, basically, you continue. um, as I said, it does take a while. Like, I'm not gonna say it doesn't. But the quality is just so much better than other approaches, let's say that much. And in my mind, in a certain way, like it's sort of like it's a bit zen-y. I kind of really enjoy retopology now. A lot of people don't. I will 100% say that. A lot of people really do not like retopology, but I think it's kind of cool. So if you're having a stressful day, you've got some retopology to do, that's a win. Get some relaxing music going. Then you got that. Now, this approach, like say for example, I could start pulling it out here, and then I have to do that. But I kind of want to grab this part and get that sort of done. So let's go maybe there. Now I'm just looking at the top, and I'll fix this in a second. So now I can go. This is where you start getting really kind of tricky in regards to how do you get this where you want it to. And also note how there's that bit there. So it does go up. So one approach would be just to go up like so. There. And then with those two, I think this is an T. It's a really useful one. So it is a add-on that I will go to in a second. So if you go to Edit Preferences, Add-ons, and it's called F2. Like that's all it is, and it's not on. Interesting, because I installed the latest version. What does that do then? What have I been doing? Extends the make edge face functionality. So put this on just in case, but it did something I thought that was that. So if you press F, so say for example, let's just do a quick version. So I'm just going to press F. Oops, no, F, and it will join those two, right? But also, if I select that and press F, it will close it. So the F functionality is quite good. What I'm going to do here, so you've got that. I'm actually going to remove that one. And do that instead. Oh, no, what? Oh, yeah. Okay. What's that? So this is where you start getting into how precise do you want to be. Now, this is a very complicated sort of bake issue because it's got like that little bit of detail in there. So say, for example, I might want to, maybe, use K to put a knife edge in there and move that up there. So you get that little bit more detail. And the bake would be maybe slightly better because of it. But that line isn't really that beneficial. So I'm actually going to remove that and then move this one a little bit more that way. And there you go. So that's sort of like a better approach to that. And that is fine. So once again, let's continue. Yeah. Far as you can. Now, the give on that situation is not many people are going to look that deep into it. So it's kind of fine. But another approach. So say, for example, I want to join those, but I want another one in here. So instead of doing edge, I'm going to press F to join those two. Control R to add a loop in there, and then just do G on that. There we go. Okay. Now the reason I have quite a lot of polygons in here, especially in here, and maybe I don't need to. Once again, you're not going to see that edge, so I'm actually going to close that one. See how that goes. Move that up a bit. Now that one's a point, so I need that one basically there, but I can turn these around a little bit. Yep. So that's just a removed edge. I'm going to keep that edge there because I want that sharp edge here. Because if I get rid of that, there is a chance that that polygon will actually cut across there. So sometimes, at least, you might want to add triangles to control your polygons a little bit better. I'm going to get rid of that one. Actually, no, I'm not, because I want that there as well. Yeah. Now, ideally, you want sort of circles to be like clean, like even sort of thing. So let's have a look at something. I'm going to extrude this out to here. I'm going to scale Y, that direction, good, 0. So we've got that. I'm going to rotate it a bit, just to sort of line up there a bit. Move that across a bit, so that GX, turn off snap, because I don't want it to snap at this point. Now, a very useful other add-on that is free, comes with it, is loop tools. So for example, if I go circle, that will make that into a circle, which is what I want for all the reasons. So let's scale that down a bit. And I can clean that up a bit. But the add-on, once again, preferences, click that one, and type in loop tools and make sure that is on. Because loop tools, and there are other ones, but I pretty much always use circle. So as an example, let's see if we can line this up just a little bit better. Now note that you will rotate according pretty much to your screen. Move as well. So you can actually use that to your advantage, kind of lining stuff up like this. That's nearly perfect. So that is a perfect circle using the tool from not even perfect. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. But say, for example, I can use this to shape my actual circle if I wanted to. Let's put snap back on. And do a little bit more fuzzy. Just to try and kind of line things up a bit better. Now that I need, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay. That one's a little low in comparison to these other ones. So I can move them up around a bit. And therefore I have a better circle. So yeah, engineering and reverse engineering at best. So let's do that. Let's press F to close that off. Now I want a little bit of that. Now I don't want to go in because that's too many polygons and like you'll never see that edge, right? So I'm going to use inset. And I'm sort of going to go, oops, no, go down to maybe there. Maybe even smaller. So I'm just going to press S to scale up even more. Yep, cool. And then I'm going to go E up a bit and then scale that down. So you get that sort of maybe a bit more. No, that's good. I'm going to keep it. So baking, and this comes into the big baking thing. Baking creates high polygon information on the texture. So you can, it's kind of like the simple version is bump map, but unfortunately a long time ago, bump maps were literally like grayscale up and down. Normal maps have a little more control and complexity. So basically, if you had let's see if you can see that. If you have a flat polygon across there, right? And then underneath you have a high polygon information like that, which is kind of what we're doing here. The normal on the texture, so the polygon normal will project the information of this and the height, the difference, into the texture, right? So if you have a flat normal going across that way, everything below it will be projected at the right height on what it is. And there are ways you can sort of hijack this in interesting ways. So say, for example, this approach, and I don't know if it's the right way, but it's the way I'm going to, like, I would try it this time and see how that works. But all this light, so if you look at the edge here, you have projection information at those normals, not the front, just on here, right? So it would project that low depth into this polygon here, and then it would kind of adjust according to this. So we have the silhouette, which looks good, but you would have this detail accurate as well. So I think that's a really good way to test anyway. The other approach is maybe you would push this bigger and then down. So let's look at that as an example. So let's say oops, get rid of snap, go down like that. So this way it would bake or project that and that into that texture, and then the loop there. So it's really quite interesting figuring out the best way to normal map project high quality detail on two things like that. I'm going to go with that approach. But say, for example, you would not want to, for such a small detail. So this, if you see a character, it's probably going to be that big at best. So if you see that, that's pretty important. But you see that, it's not, because there's no silhouette. And it would actually look better as a texture than the baked approach. So you can actually use normal maps to just be better. So you've got that. Just for argument's sake, what I'm doing, I'm going to all the transforms, so the normal is there, and then apply a mirror. So it feels like I'm going faster. Done. Cool. Now, of course, I'm going a lot slower than, because I'm also teaching. So this would be usually a lot faster. Another F tool maybe, or just standalone Blender, is if you have a cut like this, and then you just press F, it will put the polygon where it would be as a square, and then I can easily just adjust. Put snap back on. G, so that F, and then sort of just do that, which, as you can see, pretty quick. Let's get all of that. No, that, and then Control and it will select everything in the middle. And go E. Let's keep on going. So G, E, G. Okay, there. That's easy. Let's do it again. Now, because that edge loop sort of ends there, it doesn't select the whole thing, so that's good. Once again, let's just go down. Now I'm going to merge those two, because that is a point. So last, and then we can just keep going with this one. So G. The catch with now is because we've got overlaps, right? So this is always on top. And this comes back to sort of choosing which visibles, I guess, you want. So let's say let's put solid on again in front, and that looks good, but you can't see the the things. So it's kind of a bit tricky when things become what would you call it? One-sided. I think. Let's try something. So I'm going to put a new material on, and I'm going to do backface culling. Uh, ah, yeah. So that's the catch with the material. If you want to see the material, you have to use the material preview, or that has to have lighting. So let's see. Oh, so this doesn't work anymore. Really? Come on. Ah, hmm. Okay, I'll put that up with multiple weights. Um, but yes, so tweak your settings so they work for you, basically. Um, I think every application honestly has things that are a little bit more complicated than they need to be. Well, not complicated, not as clear, I think would be a better word. That said, you start picking up like the read on it pretty quickly. Now that gets interesting because I can't see that. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to move, and hopefully this works. Control L. Excellent. Let's separate that. Yep. Name it because I'm good at that. Bye. Then back to it. So in this stage, you kind of want to keep everything sort of separate so you can have more control over what you see, what you don't see. But when you're baking, you'll want that information to be, well, depending on what the asset is really. So case by case. Now notice how that one will loop again. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to do that. Hmm. I'm sure you're getting how this plays out. And now I'm kind of stuck on wanting to make this because I remembered making this so long ago. It was really cool. Having a StarCraft Marine as a VRM would be cool. That said, do note that yeah, so this creation process is basically the same um, for assets. How do I want to do that? I probably want that curved actually. So I'm gonna keep the polygon loop in there because I clean that up. Once again, it's done the edge loop. E. Now, a very useful tool on mirror. So go back to that. Do clipping. So when I join, it just joins it in the middle. Now you've got that issue there, but to be honest, like that's actually the high polygon. I'd have to clean that on the high polygon. Let's keep going around here, shall we? That one. Yeah. Um, Now, an interesting question, and it depends on what you're making. It's a bit more curved. So we have to kind of put more edge loops in there, I think. Is in an ideal world, you want to kind of have. I guess you don't. Like if you can optimize the edge loops so that they're usually polygons, so squares across the board, if you can. You don't have to, especially if you're not animating it. But if you're animating it, you kind of do, especially in like in the shoulder or knees or thigh joints, like all that sort of stuff. You want really good clean edges. If it's an asset that isn't going to animate, the poly count and the edge loops are less important, and you can kind of get away with motor on the grounds that you don't need to care as much. That said, if you were going to go for a job in the games industry, edge loops are important. It's a very important skill to have if you want to make optimized assets that look good in Folio. So having that skill in your list is good. I have it on the grounds that I started doing this 20 years ago when you didn't have a choice. Triangles were like considered really bad, like really bad. But that's eased up a little bit, especially when things like Unreal and stuff have as many polygons as you want. So it's more of an animation question. That said, it is neat. It really does speed up your selection of assets, which is so. Say for example, if this wasn't as clean, I couldn't do that, right? So if this was just decimated or whatever, I couldn't move that and then say move it around. I couldn't add sharp on that if I wanted to. So yeah, edge loops super useful for these sort of things. So say for example here, I'm going to delete that one, and then we have our quad, and it's still quite neat. Let's go. Now this is interesting because this is at the back, right? So you're going to have a helmet at the back here, like so this is going to be hidden basically, and because it's hidden, it doesn't need that data, or it doesn't need to be. No, that's it. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Now the problem with this one is, say for example, I want that to be a circle because this was originally no doubt a circle, but because it's mirrored, that doesn't work. So if I do, oh, it does work. Huh. Well done, loop tools. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off and then move that back a bit. So that's a G and a Y to go there. And that's pretty good. So let's just keep that. D, D, so it goes straight up. E, right click, S to scale. Then E, Z down. And let's F that. Closed, done. What are some other areas that are interesting? This one. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to just grab this. Reasons. So Shift D, move it down. Now what I might do just to make this easier, grab that, Control L, great. Separate that. and hide it. So one approach is I could put the circle on the end, I could put the circle in the middle. Now the reason I'm going to do that is because there are some angles that you might get, so you want to see a bit of that, right? One other approach, if you were doing a low polygon asset, like this wasn't important, is you just have one big circle one. So let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. So how can we do this easily? S, Y, 0. Yeah, scale it up. Now notice this is still a circle, and we're going to clean that up a bit if we need to, because we can. So let's rotate that there. Move it kind of down there a bit. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's pretty good. But I'm going to clean it up just a little bit. So let's do that. So one. Just to get it as close as possible and hope that the original was also a circle. Maybe it wasn't. Loop tools, circle. Great. Now let's grab the loop and E, right click, scale. Right. Now, say for games, well, I'm all about the silhouette, so I'm just going to put that back on, put this there, and this one there. Needs to be. These, I'm going to move these slightly. Now, in some ways, it doesn't actually matter that much, because the bake will kind of clean it up. That's a bit too much of one. You've got that. So that works really well, but this one doesn't because it's a different position. So for that, what am I going to do? I'm going to keep applying this to make sure it works. Let's just do this, I guess. Let's say, for example, what I might do there, last, and delete that one. And therefore, we have our square. So square, triangle, but that's kind of fine. Once again, that's not going to be animated. Sort of cut that to save the thing. And therefore, we have that. So it kind of depends on like what every, let's say detail, changes your approach depending on what you're aiming to do, right? So if this was a character for Unreal or a cinematic, you would not be cutting it down so much. But if I'm using this, or even keeping the original, to be honest, because they're going to be crazy. That said, it would slow down your computer if you're having 100 Marines in a fight, for example, at that original resolution. Then that's going to slow down even the best computer. And that's where you start using proxies and stuff like that to represent the high polygon when you're editing it, and then when you render it, you make the actual. So that's one approach to it as well. So there's a lot of approaches to optimizing and figuring out what you want to do. That said, WebGL, which is what Mono does, is its own, what would you call it? Beast. It's using a browser, and WebGL is not as good as WebGPU, and that's a new direction for creating assets in web browsers. So I'm looking forward to that because you can start getting ray tracing, I think, because it uses the graphics cards more. But WebGL is quite limited, and therefore you have to consider, okay, is this detail important enough to require the extra polygons? And some of the things that go through my head when looking at that is, one, there is going to be this over the top. And having a baked map so close to another baked map might be a bit weird. You wouldn't see that sort of detail at certain angles. So I might want to do that. The angle... Feel weird. So I might want to add a bit of detail in there. That said, the bump information, like the projection information, is kind of straight on, right? So if I had, let's look at some examples. So let's say I inset this down to about, scale it down to about there. All of these projections, like that and that and that, it would be really good. Like it would look really good from most angles. You wouldn't get the depth if you do that, because the projection is down. That said, if I move this down to sort of there, right? These projections, so that angle, will kind of skip some of that information, right? So it would sort of shoot that angle across there instead of straight down, which might not look as good. So it's kind of interesting to balance, and it's very similar to palette texturing, where you're designing your polygons according to the texturing, rather than not worrying about texturing and just imagining that it's going to look great. So these are some examples of things that I might want to do to get those that quality up, but also cutting the poly count, if that makes sense. So how am I going to do that? What I would probably do, if you want to get real tricky, what you could do, and I haven't actually done this much, but I haven't, what would you call it? I haven't done these kind of assets for a while, and my skills have improved since doing that. So what I could possibly do is design the high polygon mesh in a way that the low polygon bake looks better, right? So say, for example, I would go into this, and I would maybe grab all of these and rotate them to the low polygon so it bakes better. So that's one way. The other approach is I could go into the material in Substance Painter or whatever I'm doing the texturing manually, and then manually improve it, right? So I can edit the normal map and stuff like that. So there are, once again, many different ways to get the best result in your texture, according to your model, according to your low polygon model, and all that sort of stuff. So apologies if I missed some of this information because Discord's been silly. But anyway, so yes, adjust the high poly, edit the material manually. Like there's many different ways to do it. Another approach, and I do this quite a lot, is I'll try this, and if it doesn't work, I'll do something else. Being able to sort of move forward in the process and back in like non-destructive ways is very, very useful. Once again, some things are very destructive and some things are not. So yeah, finding your skills to get what you need done is really good. Okay. So we've got that. Apart from that, I think, yeah. So even this one, for example, I don't. I probably would. It is pretty deep. So I'd maybe instead of having like a full flat, I'd actually put one polygon in the middle, so like an X. So it bakes that shape in there, and then texturing it correctly, that would add that depth, but also not have the cost. So as an example, let's grab that. On. And potentially, like you wouldn't need that much. It's like a relatively simple spot. But say, for example, instead of going, let's do this, E, instead of putting assets like that, and then extruding that, that, cool, very quick. So you have all these extra polys down here, which is fine. But say, for example, you want to save an amount of them. I would actually merge these at center. Just to keep the flow, let's keep that at center as well. And do that. So that would bake kind of that line into this one texture and also have the depth. So you would save a fair few polygons, to be honest. Let's do this one. Um, Once again, grab center. Once you've done one thing there, you can grab that, and then go Shift R, and it will do whatever you did last. Is a really useful shortcut for that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a really quick kind of approach to these kind of shapes. Let's get that in there, and then we can actually just do. I might want a bit more, like that, and that is a bit sharp. So what I might want to do. What happens if I do? Yeah, that's not what I want. Let's do this. K. Knife tool. There. And instead of that, I'm actually going to do that. Then we kind of get rid of that line because that's too. Yep. Forget how to do that one. That's annoying. Edges? Yeah, cool. So once again, we have our polygon, which is great, and we have that detail. So that actually is better than what I was originally thinking of doing. So that's actually excellent. Let's try this on. Ah, interesting. So note, because I deleted the edges, that didn't work. I'm just going to go there and there, and then F. There, there. Just make sure. Well, that's okay. But just to be sure, I'm going to get rid of those actually. Um, because sometimes you will get, let's say, what do you call it? Polygons. If you're doing things with edges, like you really want to make sure that you dissolve the edges correctly, if that makes sense. Otherwise, there is information, and if it's one, it's probably not going to be that big. But like, say, if you have a lot of assets, a lot of meshes, and a lot of things like that in the space, um, that are overlapping and you don't see that it will take file size, but very small. Like a polygon or a vertex is not going to take much space on its own, but they add up. Let's do up there, I think. There, F, there. Now, because we've got this, that changes things. So I'm going to do. Getting from low polygons to higher polygons is an interesting one. And that is very much a skill that takes a bit of getting used to. So let's see what we can do with that idea. Now, there are a lot of sort of retopology tools or approaches to getting uh, high polygon down to low polygon. The face is a prime example. When you do enough characters, you get really good at figuring out ways to get like a low polygon range into a high polygon range with trying to keep good edge loops and polygons. Hands especially particularly nasty for different reasons. Um, One approach is just to add and then like sort of use this space to reduce. So say for example, if I did that, um, I might, what would I do there? For that, I probably wouldn't even go down. I think I'd push that in and go to the button, and the normal map can do that bit. Yeah. And with here, let's sort of clean that up a bit and make the normal map do all the work. So that's a quad, for example, but it's not a very good quad. So if I alt click here, I can't select all of that, for example, but in this one I can. So there are situations where like a triangle polygon like this would kind of mess things up a bit. That said, that straight isn't that useful, so I'm going to merge that, and then do that. With that in mind, I'm actually going to move these across that line. G, not F. Again, let the normal map do its job. So that triangle, for example, is fine. This is never going to animate. And like once again, the occasional triangle, if it saves the polygons, is fine. That said, I could put a line up there into there. So that's another approach. So yeah, it's always a balance between figuring out which things require more polygons and which ones don't. I'm going to go with don't for this one. Okay, so that's going to go around. Let's sort of join these up to, how are we going for time? 2 hours. As I said, Zen. Lose track of time way too easily. There. I'm gonna. You can still see the light will play on it, so you might utilize. So you might utilize different tools. So you might follow the lines. So if I wanted to, for example, let's make, what's this one? That one. Wireframe. So you might want to use the wireframe, and you can even snap to the vertices of that if you really wanted to. So say that I want to snap to there, just snap to there, snap to there. So yeah, the snap tools go on any level that you might want. Way too complex, I'm going to get rid of that. So yeah, lots of tools to utilize. Kind of curve there, so let's get a bit more. Like in that. And to be honest, that is a bit curved. So I'm going to an edge loop there, and that'll make this easier to match up as well. So let's grab these two. Up. Those two. Picking the battles of which ones you want to fight. But as noted, like in this case, a lot of this is mechanical. It's not going to animate, so it is less important. Not unimportant, but certainly less important. Up a bit, so the normal could sort of work its magic. So yeah, with all that in mind, you can sort of get an idea of what would happen for the rest of this character. I need to figure out if I can get the legs and stuff back and find the original retopologers because I've actually already done this. But that said, I'm better at things now. because this was done. When was this done? Um, uh, 2000, like Unreal Tournament 2003, I think it was. So a while ago. Yeah, I'm just gonna join those and then get two in there. That's what the above kind of used, I think. And yeah, etc. etc. So as an example, I kind of want to clean this. I want to finish this one. Let's get rid of that. Two, one, and as soon as as soon as I show this, I'll probably wrap it up because this has been two and a quarter. I have to see how Discord recorded this or how OBS recorded this. I hope it did it well, because I think some of this will be quite useful. I have done these sort of workshops before. So if you look on my channel, some of my earlier Mona workshops covered this sort of stuff. So check out the Matt Empire YouTube channel. Some of I think me and Sam did some photogrammetry stuff, which was pretty cool. Way back in the never. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah, I got sneaked off. That's fine. Mm, do I want that? Probably. Yeah. Let's. What was that one? Yeah, that should do. So let's put the solid back on. Let's get rid of the high. And as you can see, you're definitely getting the beginnings of a StarCraft green. That said, say for example, I'd want to go to Object Shade Smooth. Let's go on there. Oh, interesting. Why? Interesting. So let's like troubleshoot some of this, shall we? Let's go to face orientation. That's good. This is not. Tools for this while we get there. So say, for example, select the polygon you would like that is red. Go to mesh, go to normals, go to flip. That'll be the blue. The other approach, select all of them, mesh, normals, recalculate opposite. Opposite? Recalculate outside, sorry. So that's a bit better. But it does look like there is some interesting, like it's doubled up or something. I'm not sure why, but let's do some quick edits. Fine. Oh, that's interesting. Let's delete that. Faces. Right. So there was a basically a polygon across them all, but now that has been fixed. So mesh normals. Nope. Do the thing that I need. Okay. And that's what we're after. So as you can see, like the silhouette looks quite good, especially when your characters are usually going to be about that big in the space. So that looks fine. And then you would sort of bake the high polygon asset onto the low polygon asset once you've unwrapped it. So let's say we just do that and we go the quick version, unwrap, done. Make sure that your asset is 111 because that does affect the unwrapping a fair bit. And unwrapping is a whole category skill set. So we have docs on that as well. We honestly have docs on all of these now. So, the journey is definitely well documented and we've got videos for all of it. But yes, workshops on different assets and different approaches do sort of cover a lot of the things that could be missed in that process. But yeah. All right. I'm going to wrap it up there. Hope you've learned something useful. We've looked at materials and how to optimize those, especially for the Buildathon. We've also looked at retopology, decimation, and remeshing. All very useful tools. On that, no, I'll leave the remeshing tool in sculpting in Blender for a different day. But yes, if you did remeshing in Blender, or sculpting in Blender, that is a super useful tool in regards to when you're sculpting in Blender this asset and then retopology and all that sort of stuff. So cool. Let's call that done. I'm 100% going to finish this asset at some point. Even if it is, trying to figure out how to get the max files back to OBJ or FBX so Blender can import it and then I can redo that asset with all the things I've learned in the last 20 years since I did it. So that's a lot. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's call it a day. Have a good day. Thanks for watching and happy building.